Tonight's Chiddush is that Rabbeim and teachers, right, they liked school. They liked it so much they continued being in school. And then they became teachers because they like studying and they like words. And that's why they understand usually kids who like being in school. If you want to understand the kids who are not successful in school, kids who don't like being in school, that's when you need people like me who weren't successful in school. We understand the kids who don't like being in school. So in a yeshiva system, most of the Rebbeim, and I don't say most because every yeshiva is different, but usually they're very straight. They're matzliach dika people. They did well in the system. They stayed in the system, and that's what they know, and they want to teach, right? And they have to now deal with this problem and that problem. They didn't get the job because their understanding of human nature. They got the job. Let's say a math teacher. He studied the math curriculum. He likes math. He's not a psychologist. A Chumash teacher, a Rebbe, also, you don't get it because you're a psychologist. The problem is, though, that in order to be a Rebbe teaching Torah, you can't just be giving material, as the Nesiv Shalom and all the Sfarim say. If you don't love your Talmidim, you're not a successful Rebbe. And they don't say that about math. You don't say, algebra? Oh, let me see, do you love your students? What does that have to do with teaching algebra? I'm going to teach the material, and they're going to know the material. Torah works completely different. Torah works completely on love. The Nesiv Shalom says, "V'ragel ani," I am ragel. How do you say it in English? Custom, used to. I ask the Rebbeim how much they love each student, and then based on that, I know how the student is doing. It's mamish ad kedei kach. It's like, how much do you love that kid? 68. That's probably what he's doing.
That's what you ask the NKN.
That's why I always ask you the NKN. That's the blood pressure. If your NKN is 20, it doesn't matter what you do to the kid. And if your NKN is 90, it also doesn't matter. You'll be fine. It's all about the blood pressure level. Every doctor, before you do anything, you got to check the blood pressure. We have to check the NKN, the nafshik shur b'nafshe. Same thing with Rebbeim. So now, all of a sudden, these Rebbeim who did well in yeshiva, love to learn, decide instead of going into business or whatever, they're going to make a career of teaching Torah. That's one mindset, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I got to attach myself and like all these kids. No normal person would like 30 snotty kids in a class. You don't like other people's kids. You like your kids, maybe. You're going to like 30 kids? So the one who is the Chacham Lev, to be a Rebbe, to teach Torah, has to not just be successful in the system and knowledgeable and being able to speak well. He has to be some kind of a crazy, amazingly loving person that if you put him in 4th grade and you look at all these kids and he has to feel love, care, deep care for each kid in the classroom. Could you do that? I couldn't do that. I'm not too crazy about some of you. Can you imagine if they said that the only way I'll be Matzliach is if I love each and every one of you? How can you love it? And here, this Rebbe, we're telling him, you're not going to be Matzliach unless you love. So they have to have a different quality, be super loving people. And that has to be the training. The training for Rebbeim has to be somehow to open up, to be able to see, not troublemaker and kid moving around a lot, and kid drumming, and kid stupid, and kid forgetful. He has to be able to see love in kids that are hard to love, otherwise he won't be a Matzliach Dika Rebbe. He won't be Matzliach in his job of being a Rebbe, because Torah, there's like a prerequisite. You can only learn Torah from someone you love, which is, it's fascinating, because it's not knowledge, it's Chachmas HaTorah, its connection to the Rebbe is connecting to you to Hashem. I want to tell a story, just happened tonight. I was sitting at a chasana tonight, and I was sitting next to big tzaddik, wonderful educator, and famous person, Rav Nosson Sherman, from Art Scroll. I'm sitting next to him, and I was very thankful to him. He published my 2 last books, and all of a sudden, a guy taps him on the shoulder. He says, Mori v'Rabbi, Shalom Aleichem. He says, 48 years ago, I was in your class. 48 years ago, I was a kid in your class. And you told me something, and I want to tell you. Now, 48 years later, I'm a Rebbe, and every year it helps me. I give over that message to all the kids in my class. It doesn't matter what the message was. If Rabbi Sherman, when he was speaking then, would he ever chalom that 48 years later, this 10-year-old or 12-year-old would be repeating what he heard from his Rebbe and would have such a karas hatoiv to him? The Rebbeim have to realize you're talking to these little neshamalach forever. if there's no kesher, it's a waste of time. It's like you're talking to this kid, and these kids are going to go through stuff, and some are going to be rabbeim, and some are going to be suffering, and some are going to be struggling. And it's like, this is your year to be mamish kosher in a nafshiistic way to every kid, and it's super hard. How do you do that? And if you don't do that, it's like, so you said, Vayomer Hashem, you missed the internal part that's supposed to happen. So the internal growth of a child going through the system, right, according to the Nesiv Shalom, it's like sowing internally and making the kid stronger and more connected to Hashem and understanding Ratzon Hashem and giving him emunah and giving him bitachon. It's not just teaching material. Because if you just know material and you don't have the pneumius, then as soon as you hit your first bump, material's not saving me. You don't have emunah bitachon. You don't have a connection to this 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 rabbeim from all my years that I'm connected to. Baruch Hashem, my kids went to a fabulous yeshiva. I'm talking about my son graduated 9 years ago. He's still in touch with the Rosh Yeshiva, with the Manal, and tonight at the Chasana, there were all the rabbeim were there. Everyone, they asked me, how's your son? Dovi, Tzvi, Srili. How do you remember their names? 8 years later, 6 years later, 4 years later, they're kosher. You have a whole year to bind yourself to a kid, so when he's in trouble, he's going to call you. You have a whole year to prove one thing to the kid. I like you. I like you. I'm here for you. And then you can teach, and then you can teach, and then you can, and if you don't teach, you won't teach, but that's the thing that the kid's going to hold on to. He's going to see years later, and he'll say, that was my 4th grade Rebbe. This Shabbos, B'didi Hava Uvda, I bumped into my 3rd grade Rebbe. I said, Rebbe. It's like, he's a Rebbe. He was a great Rebbe. If I would bump into my 5th grade Rebbe, I want to bump into him with my car. I didn't connect to him. My 7th grade Rebbe just called me. He just left me a message. He was when I was in 7th grade, he was young, vibrant, alive. He was my Rebbe in 7th grade and 9th grade. 30 years goes by, even more, and I'm driving in Williamsburg, and I pulled over for something to get a cup of coffee or something, and I see this little old man walking. I'm like, Rebbe? You know, they get old. He's this frail little guy. He just called me. Actually, I could hardly hear him on the voice. Doesn't sound like he's doing too well, right? And I helped him out with a project. It's like, you got to think long term. Then 30 years from now, you should have Talmidim that see you and they say, Rebbe, Ma'iri v'Rabbi, I learned this. I'll never forget what you taught me. And you have a whole year for that. And you have to do that for the kids who are naturally interested in what you're teaching. And you have to do it for the kids that are struggling. For many good reasons that kids struggle. It's a very tough job. I think today, from what I could see, the Rebbeim are phenomenal. The new Rebbeim are learning psychology, and they're going to courses, and they're not just coming in and saying, either listen or get out. They're realizing they're tafkid. More and more and more. The young Rebbeim are gevaldig. Young Menalim, the mamish. You know how many Rebbeim came here to train in the last 5 years? Hundreds. A Chassidish guy came to my TP training. I said, what are you doing? So he's in a Chassidish yeshiva. I'm the manal of like 1,000 kids, whatever. It's like 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. 6 parallel classes. It's like 1 million kids under his thing. So I said, what are you doing here? You're dealing with 8-year-old, 6, how old are these kids?
6, 7, and 8.
6, 7, and 8-year-old kids. What do you need to come here to hear about trauma and off the derech and all that? He said, Ich da wissen alles. I need to know everything. They're looking for information. They want to know everything. They chap, they gain, they're smart, they're sharp, they're charismatic. It's a whole new dar. And it's changing. One of the reasons it's changing is because the young people already know about emotional pain. The older dar, we didn't have this emotional pain. So come on, get in line. Give them a little zets, get everybody going. But the younger generation, they already have friends that are hurting, or they themselves went through a depression, and they were a counselor of a kid who was going through some kind of whatever. So they're much more sensitive to nafshiistic emotional problems. They're very emotional. These guys are you have to care about each person. You have to be sensitive. I was on the phone today with a parent. It's amazing how much stuff happens to me. And the parent called me up. I sent out this thing about apologizing, right? So this guy sends me a WhatsApp. He's not a TP parent, but he gets my stuff, and he's Makarav. His kid is 30 plus years old. Kid's like 38 or something. Very nice to his kid, and he's getting a lot of CHIZUK from the stuff. He says, so I want my son's Rebbe from 30 years ago to apologize to him. So he had somebody call him, and the guy said, I am going to apologize to a kid? Never. That's 30 years ago. Rabbeim today are not like that. Rabbeim today are like sensitive to realizing that people are sensitive and broken. I think by and large, they're really doing an amazing job. I give them a lot of credit.